Hello, I'm Soycat, and this weekend the United States had a fairly high-profile political assassination. As you can see, this man right here was aimed at and tried to be shot and almost died, and this is something the rest of the world is kind of shocked by because isn't there meant to be a whole service deliberately aimed at preventing these things from happening? The US is no stranger to political assassinations. There are two of the most famous in history. This is perhaps the most famous if it weren't for this one right here. So how is it that so many assassinations happen in this one country, and how is it that this one wasn't predicted as a result? Why did someone want to kill the former president of the United States? What were their actual goals, and what does it mean for US politics as a whole? And then the third question, to kind of tie it into the map channel, is how many countries have actually gone through political assassinations for their head of state? It's a surprising number, but it's there's some more interesting bits to the data as we dive into it. So let's start with the first question: how does this even happen? And the easiest way that I've seen this put, I feel like this should be more shared, is that yes, here was the stage. As you can see, it's in front of these buildings. There were Secret Service agents, people whose job it was to protect the presidents, but also former presidents, which includes Mr. Trump here. But as you can see, their job was to protect him. They're all the way around him, and they're on top of the buildings behind him. However, the gunman had a M16 with a scope on it from over 100 meters away, and he was on this building where he fired his shot. And so there are two big ways that you can look at, like, oh yeah, man laid down on building and had a very precise shot, is the fact that, well, obviously you can't protect every single building anywhere within gun range of every single place the president ever is. That's just fundamentally impossible, especially if you're going through cities. But the other way to say this is no, the Secret Service, their job is to protect the president. It's very obvious if the gunman could come up with the idea of going on this building, then they should have come up with the idea of being there first, because this was literally inches, I guess, because it's in the US. This was inches away from being a major murder of a former US president, something which would genuinely change politics in a big way, you might say. And so I think this is really interesting in its own right, but I also think it's, and so that's why the big debate about the Secret Service has begun, because fun fact, as this map suggests, the US has gone through more than one assassination. So outside of the dark red countries, where it was for the sake of a coup, you know, like basically you kill the person in charge so that you can have a new person become in charge, a fair few countries, about a third of them, have gone through some form of assassination. I was surprised to learn Brazil wasn't on this list. I feel like, you know, you hear about like referees being murdered because of football games there, but no, they don't kill the president very nicely. But as you can see, a lot of countries have gone through something like that, but very few have gone through two or more. It's like Russia, Japan, Iran, we got France and Spain and Italy, and you know, outside, it's really just a few countries that have gone through two or more assassinations, and the US has gone through way more than its fair share. Again, if the US was not the most successful and wealthy country on the planet, you would be having questions about what's going on in their government, because the first big assassination happened by President number 16. He was shot in the back of the head, and that's kind of interesting by itself. But bear in mind, this was the 16th president, and they elect them every 4 years, so a maximum of 8 years per president. It was literally just the 20th president that it happened again by, Mr. Garfield. You know, I hope it wasn't a Monday, that's for sure. But more seriously, the fact that this happened just 4 months into his term as president means that the people elected Mr. Garfield, but he never got to serve out his policy, or he never got to serve out his belief in what the president should be, because he died 4 presidents after Abraham Lincoln. But then they finally got a grip on things for a really long time. Just kidding. William McKinley, 25th president of the United States, dies. And that's also pretty damn bad. I feel like it should be said, 3 presidents within the span of 10 being murdered while they are president is very, very bad. It's one of the highest, most deadly jobs in the world. But then obviously JFK happens, and that's when the Secret Service gets their stuff together. You know, obviously after this, they started realizing they should stop just looking after fake money, because fun fact, that's their original job. They started looking after the president too, and after this, they really stepped up their game, because there hasn't been a president assassinated or shot at ever since. Except, well, obviously, that's not true in the slightest. Ronald Reagan, basically, he was shot by someone, John Hinckley Jr., who believed that by shooting the president, he would impress Jodie Foster, who he had become obsessed with because he saw her in the 1976 film Taxi Driver. That is true, by the way. It is crazy, but it is, in fact, true. I cannot imagine what she thought about that. That's a weird side note I'd like to know. But he was shot, and it's fun because he would have died. He was close to death. The only reason he didn't die is because medicine got better. America is not getting better at protecting their presidents from being shot. They're getting better at putting them back together again after they die. And so obviously you then add to this. So bear in mind, what is this? Like, we look at the big list of US presidents. So president number 16, shot. President number 20, shot. President number 25, shot. President number 35, wow, they had a 10 president gap with no shooting, shot. President number 40, shot. President number 45, also shot. This is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, and I cannot, as a result, you've got to imagine every one of these guys is like, oh, this might happen to me any day now. I guess they're at least former presidents. It is a very, very, very scary and dangerous job, and so as a result, that is why it is a big deal, but also why it's, I guess, expected. Like, you know, within 5 presidents, there's gonna be another one of these, and that's why it probably shouldn't be expected, which is why this comes down. Why did this happen? What were they actually aiming for by doing it, though? Because each of these assassination attempts is slightly different. Like, you know, this one obviously was someone who obviously felt like they could help the Confederate cause. This one is someone who was deliberately aiming to kill the president. It's a really dumb reason as to why. Each of these is for a different reason. This was an anarchist, I believe. One of the more interesting ones of them, obviously, was the Ronald Reagan assassination. I mean, I don't believe he ever did get with Jodie Foster in the end, if I'm not mistaken. Is he in prison still, do you reckon? So John Hinckley Jr. he may showcase his artwork under his own name rather than anonymously, and he has a YouTube channel now. Oh my god, wow, that is crazy. Okay, I'm not going to look into assassins, because I think it's a bit of a weird thing to do. I know there's a fascination with it, and that's why US media does this, but I think one of the reasons this comes up so often is because you'll see stuff like, oh yeah, well, within literally a day of this happening, the media have worked out where he went to high school. They've got his picture from his yearbook, they know his age, they know his job, they know his hometown, they spoke to his school counselor, who said they never knew him to be political, but he was a registered Republican, based on his state voter records, but he did donate to a liberal campaign, and Americans use the word liberal to mean left-wing. So the fact is that, yeah, as a result, you can't quite work out what he's going for, but the only thing you can say for sure is that based on what Trump has been up to this week, the fact that it was the Republican National Convention, you can be fairly sure that his big goal was probably to aim to have Trump not be elected as or rather not be confirmed as the Republican nominee for president. As you'll know, in the United States, people are 100% convinced that there is only 2 people who can become president. The Democratic nominee, this fella right here, who's saying you need to lower the temperature in politics, and then there's this fella right here. They're the only 2 people that can possibly be the next president. There's no other way. There's nothing else you can even write on your paper. I mean, that's not true, but it's the way people talk about it, right? And so, as a result of this being true, if you want to have someone else be leader because you think this man is bad and this man is bad, then what can you do? Well, you have to make sure one of these people isn't around anymore. Is the only way you can see that, which is, I think, very, very wild, but is what they're going for. And so if you kill him before the Republican National Convention, then obviously they have to select another Republican. And so if you're a Republican and you just want someone who's like a normal Republican as opposed to a Trump-era Republican, that's what you would do. I think, though, the reality is, if there was an assassination, you would basically have to, as a party, elect the closest person to the person who died as you could. Maybe I'm reading into that one too much. I don't think it would have actually been very successful. It really kind of comes down to polarization, but who actually benefits from this? Trump obviously feels like he does, based on his raising of the fist and the USA chanting and all that stuff. But what's interesting here is, if you look into it, I read a fairly interesting description from this person, Christopher Rhodes, a lecturer in government at Harvard University, who obviously has a lot of his own political opinions, but he says that this is really good for him. The former president is basking in the public and media attention, but also he reckons this is good for the Biden campaign because they are desperate to avoid talking about Biden. The way that the Biden campaign wins is by saying it's Trump or it's not Trump. Those are your 2 choices. You know, they both benefit from the whole idea of, like, it's either them or it's not them. They're the only 2 presidents you can have. And I guess if I have to be not them, then sure, that's how it will be. And so, yeah, that's why, I also think that's why it's probably a good thing that both people are saying, yeah, we should lower the temperature a little bit. We should say that we should not be calling the other person the worst person in the world and implying that their getting in charge would be literally so bad for the country it would never recover. Because when you do stuff like that, you encourage people to say, oh yeah, we need to, there's no place in America for violence. It's a good thing to say, right? I feel like that's a good goal in general, but especially when it comes to politics. Why do I believe that? I guess is the big end debate from this video. By the way, I should also mention, technically the UK had an assassination. I had to look into this to see if it was true, and the answer is Spencer Percival, a man who, the reason he got assassinated too is real wild. Like, he's a person who kind of rose to fame in politics. He did a fairly good job. He did a lot of successful, things that a lot of people didn't. But then, fun fact, he was assassinated. And why was he assassinated? Because the man who did it, John Bellingham, believed he'd been unjustly imprisoned in Russia and was entitled to compensation but didn't get it. And so he decided to kill the prime minister, which is kind of silly. Look at this picture of it. That was in 1812, by the way, which is, but just to mention how long ago that was, 212 years since we've assassinated a prime minister. What's the US looking like? It's not quite so good. I just a little bit of superiority complex you've got to have as a, but I think more seriously though, I think, there is a real problem in political violence, whether it's 1812 UK or whether it's 1965, 1963 United States, or whether it's 1981 United States, or whether it's 2024. I think that an important thing that is overlooked is the idea that, yeah, the reason that countries go through, you know, the political coup is the idea that if you kill the leader, you can just replace and pick your own new leader. That is a bad system of governance. That's a system of governance that doesn't pick the people, it doesn't pick the president or the prime minister or the leader the people want. It picks a leader that is able to be most violent towards the previous leader, which leads countries into instability spirals, which is where Haiti is right now, right? You don't want to be a country that says violence is rewarded with the highest job in the land. You know, you want to send violent people to prison or maybe even shoot them to death, depending on your views on capital punishment. But you want bad things to happen to people who do bad things is something you probably want in there. And so the interesting thing is, if you don't have a system like that, even countries with dictatorships realize they need to have elections because you need to have some way for power to transfer peacefully. You don't want it to be that the most violent people get to win. You want it to be that you've got to convince the most people to your cause. And so even Iran, which has a supreme leader, by the way, he's been in charge since it's a crazy day. He's been in charge since 1989. The supreme leader of Iran, Mr. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he just leads the country. But still, they have elections. They just finished their second round about 10 days ago. And in those elections, the reformists beat the principalists. But, you know, like the fact that even a country that has literally a supreme leader realizes that, yeah, we're going to make people real upset unless we give them some elections to deal with as well, is proof that in the rest of the world, having elections is a good thing too. By the way, I just want to point out that when Ronald Reagan had an assassination attempt, it did turn out pretty well for him. There's a little bump there. Admittedly, it's early in his term, so it might be a bump in general. A similar thing might happen with Trump, or it might not. Maybe people are so perfectly polarized towards him that it makes no difference. People who love him will love him more, and people who dislike him go, well, yeah, that's bad, I guess, rather than actually considering voting for him. But I think what is interesting about this whole thing is that both sides really need to be clear that, yeah, there is, both sides have spent so long spending all their time saying the only way to prevent bad things from happening is voting for us. The other side is so bad and will ruin the country. I mean, all the times that they didn't ruin the country, looking at the presidents, the people on the other side who didn't ruin the countries during their time, that was because they were just building up for this time where they will. I think that Joe Biden will ruin the country, but he just had to wait for a second election, then he's going to get it done. The same with Donald Trump. The truth is, the president is not meant to be the most powerful body in the land, right? I think he'll even say the president was not meant to be the most powerful office. It's something that people have made that way by going super polarized into this one man who rules it all, who decides how the country will be. He decides if gas prices are high or if inflation is bad. He gets to unleash COVID on the world or not. There's so many ridiculous things that I think people will put onto the president, and that is not a healthy way to run a democracy. He is a man who leads one branch of a government which you get to be in, and it's okay to think that is a big deal, whether it's this guy or whether it's this guy, but it's not okay to be like, if this doesn't happen, everyone you know will die and lose their rights and lose their access to blah, 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 and it's the end of the country. The reason they didn't end the country last time is because they didn't realize that they could, and it's just, I feel like it's an important thing that's worth saying, and that is why I want to go very clearly right now. If you disagree with someone, try voting for the people that you don't want to, for the people you do want to be in charge. And if you do like someone, then vote for them. And if you really don't like someone and you think, oh, the only way to stop it is murder, no, murder is never the answer, as best I can tell. And yeah, if I ever do run for politics, we can play that after my inevitable assassination attempt. So with that said, I hope you'll enjoy this video. I hope you found it to be interesting. And if you did, then, I don't know, do things you like to it. Go to patreon.com if you've been enjoying these politics videos and buy me a kebab or a lobster roll or a fun drink. You can do precisely those things. None of the money goes to improving this channel. It will stay nice and low quality forever and ever and ever. And if you enjoyed that, then that's good. And if you don't enjoy that, then, I don't know, fun fact, actually. So you know there's been 46 presidents of the United States, except no there hasn't. There's been 45 presidents of the United States. The reason Joe Biden's number 46 is because I think it's 22 and 24. Yeah, Grover Cleveland was number 22 and 24. The US counts non-consecutive presidential terms as different presidents. And so I made a bet on the US election, and I've been talking to people in my real life here in the UK, and I've been asking them what odds they think I got for it, and everyone is shocked by the odds that I got for one of the two candidates. And so, yeah, fun fact, the favorite is actually Donald Trump by quite a bit right now. That might go up, I doubt it, but it's likely to stay where it is at the very least. And so that means that if nothing changes between here and the election, statistically most likely outcome is Donald Trump becomes president number 47 of the United States, despite actually being the 44th person to hold that job. Isn't that interesting? I think it is. Speaking of interesting things, thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you found it interesting, and if you didn't, then sorry. Goodbye. Second channel, don't care.